Committee. The school committee may seek to convene into open session and recess to executive session for discussion and action regarding these items of business that stem from the open meeting under general law 4246-4 and a discussion and an action NEASK negotiations, Rhode Island General Law 4246-5A2, and a discussion and action student BF potential litigation 4246-5A2. Do we have a motion to convene?
I make a motion to convene an executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Ready. We are back from the executive session. Do apologize for the lateness, but I'd like to call the meeting to order. So we have Mr. Bradley Scher,
Here.
Mr. James Restivo,
Here.
Ms. Carol Vetter,
Here.
Miss Melissa Boyd is not with us tonight, Miss Kate Massey,
Here.
Miss Michelle Russo,
Yeah.
and myself, Paul Whitford, present. Please join us in the pledge of allegiance to the flag
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
I'll make a motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There was no votes taken in the executive session. Next on the agenda is community comments. See, one consistent community member. Mr. Beasley, if you want to step up to the podium.
Good evening. Doral Beasley. So, I don't think I remember seeing any school committee members at last night's town council meeting. And I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the meeting that took place, but it was quite an eye opener as far as I'm concerned. For a good portion of an hour, maybe a little bit more, the town council. So one of the councilors, Greg Sweet, had sent in a list of questions concerning budgeting and the school referendum and stuff. And Deb Bergner had asked for a little bit more information on the funding part of it to be discussed last night. So lo and behold, they had this discussion, and I don't know if you probably know this, but up pops the new school bond project funding and analysis, which is different than the one you've seen prior. You guys have this, right? You don't have it? So
To interrupt, but this is all new to, this is stuff that the school building committee has, that school committee does not have it currently. And so I don't necessarily, it was presented in a public meeting last night. Many of us did watch the meeting. But I don't know procedurally, it's not on our agenda, and I don't know procedurally about, like, I know he can talk about it. all he
You can
wants.
talk about it. We, as per policy, and what I would like to see at every meeting is that there should be no it's not discourse.
Okay.
So especially commenting upon these types of things.
Because this will be presented to the school committee and by the town finance officer, but it hasn't yet.
Again, I would always recommend that just to be sure that we do not run afoul of any types of open meetings, concerns, issues. I know that there have been some in the past,
Yep.
which we have steered well clear of those for a while now. Obviously, Mr. Beasley is free to discuss. He can discuss anything that he would like within reason and decorum. But there should be no comments from
Great, thank you.
the
All right,
committee, I
so-
should say.
Right, so at some point you will see this, but the reason I'm bringing it up tonight is 1 week from tomorrow, voting starts on the referendum. Early voting and mail-in ballots can already. Oh, man. Okay, so, um, so the voting is going to start in a week. And then the discussion turned to then, the public comment part. The person before me came up and asked the town council if the public, the voting public, the 20,675 voters eligible to vote, are they going to be given information about what they're voting on? And it started out as like, no. Why would we? Why should we? Mr. McIntyre at one point said, I don't see any reason to. Okay, now, by the end of the discussion, I think that started to change. You know, the town clerk goes, well, they asked how much would it cost? Mr. McIntyre asked how much it would cost, and the town clerk said probably around $15,000. Okay. This is a $150 million project. You have 20,675 people that can vote. If it costs $1 to send out an envelope with a page or two in there, with all the information that you want to go to the people who are going to vote, either yes or no, to approve this referendum, to me is like insane. Why are we even arguing this? Okay, that needs to go out to the people. It's the duty of this town to send it out. The town clerk goes, well, we'll put it in the paper. Okay, forget that. They only put it in the Narragansett Times. Well, everything's in the Narragansett Times, so it's not in the Independent as far as I know. They either choose one or the other paper to put all the stuff in. Then now, right this year, it's in the Narragansett Times. Now, if you looked at the budget, the town budget that was in the Narragansett Times in this week's edition, it's unreadable. You can't even read the numbers because the lines are so dark, the numbers are obscured. It's your project, okay? The school building committee is running the show, but it's your project. If this bond fails, as far as I'm concerned, this district may never recover, seriously. Okay, as far as the people I've talked to, when they say, well, what happens if it fails? I go, I don't know, but I'll never be at another meeting. There's no more energy left for people to come to meetings and go through this again. Now, I'm the only person here. Oh. I got you. I'm trying to help you guys, right? I'm trying to help you. Now, at the end of this discussion, I believe what they decided to do was they had talked to Mr. Ursullo and how could they possibly do this in time. And his suggestion was that it could be added to one of next week's. You're having 2 meetings with them next week, right? Okay, well, whatever their first one is, where they're going to be at, I don't know if that's going to be with you or not. That item could be on the agenda, and if they approve the sending of this thing, then it can go out to the public. So I hope, if you get a hold of the town council members between now and then and tell them, what are you guys doing? We need to have this information go to the taxpayers so they can vote. intelligently. Because it seemed like when Mr. McAdee says, Bob, by the way, or he said, well, I'm not sure I'm in favor of this. It makes you think like maybe they don't want people to come out and vote. You know, maybe they don't want people to know what's going on. The person before me that came up, she said, if she talks to 5 people around town, 4 of them have no clue. Okay, so that's the end of that one. I'm pretty close to done here. So in the town council's budget, they said they would like to have 5-star schools. We all do. It's my opinion, which is only it's my opinion, that the best thing that this school district could do to start this process of improving what our students' assessment scores is to put that Khan Amigo AI software in your 5th and 6th grades this year for the fall. That would include having to have serious teacher sessions so that they learn how to use it. But if you put it in your 5th and 6th grades this year and it works, the next year you might be able to put it in your 4th and 7th grades. And then the next year, your 3rd and 8th grades. And the good thing about that is the next year, if the bond passes, your new high school will open. And so you'll have students that have had 3 years, the 9th graders that are going in, I mean, the 8th graders that are going to 9th grade will have had 3 years with this type of learning improvements thing that then they could carry over into the high school. And let's see, I think that's about it. My mind's kind of frazzled because I got Cox internet and we just got changed to Yahoo email and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm like pulling what's left of my hair out. Last thing, I said I would never talk about teacher absenteeism again. I lied. This is it. This is it. Okay. If you believe the numbers for the last 2 years that are in those reports for 2021, 22 and 2022, 23, if you believe those numbers are wrong, then get them corrected, send them the correct data and get them corrected so that the right numbers are in there, because unless you do that, those numbers will always be there.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
Okay, we'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. I turn that over to Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the committee. You have tonight, part of my superintendent's report, the personnel action form. You'll notice that on that form tonight is the appointment of all of our spring athletic coaches listed among all the other appointments. And they will be on this personal action report going forward. I know that was a matter of discussion at our last meeting. We certainly wish all of our spring athletic teams the very best of luck. I was fortunate enough yesterday I made it over to Old Mountain Field to catch a couple of innings of the varsity baseball team's win over Fitch High School yesterday from Connecticut. I would also draw your attention to a retirement notice on the personnel action form. Ms. Karen Campbell has given us notice of her intent to retire at the conclusion of the 2024 school year, bringing to a close 34 years of service to the students of South Kingstown. Ms. Campbell has served us as a special educator, first at South Road School and then at West Kingston School. I might add, she was also a nominee to be SK's Teacher of the Year in 2019. We wish her the very best for the remainder of the year, and we look to recognize her in a more formal way as the school year draws to a close. Also, I will draw your attention, there are several leaves of absences that have been granted that are on the personal action form. As I've noted several times before, the first 5 days of those leaves would count toward a teacher's absentee record. Anything after 5 days is exempt from being counted toward a total that would identify any teacher as chronically absent. I told you at the start of school, I would keep you apprised of such data. Tomorrow marks the end of Q3. We currently have 11 teachers who have 15 or more absences through 75% of the school year. That's not to say that they'll be labeled chronically absent by the end of the year. It's just that they would be on pace to be chronically absent. That represents about 5.2% of our instructional staff, which would bring us in line with our neighboring districts. I also want to give recognition to our staff, Ocean State Transportation, Chartwell's Food Service, our crossing guards, and our families for their cooperation yesterday during our early dismissal time prior to the eclipse. I was at Peacedale School yesterday at dismissal time, and I watched as our legions of students walking home as they left the building, and I really would not have wanted to see them leaving school at the height of the eclipse, as we're giving them instructions about when and when not to look at the sun and when not to wear their glasses. We got everybody home safely. We had no issues with early dismissal. We resumed activities once the excitement was over. And again, I thank everybody for their cooperation. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to SK senior student Dylan Wardell. Last week, after greeting the superintendent search committee here in the library, I left a few minutes into the meeting only to find this cafeteria filled with students, where Dylan was conducting his senior project, which was a team trivia event focused entirely on geography questions. There were 14 teams of students in this cafeteria with Dylan running the contest. I was so impressed with him. I was also so impressed with how much the students knew as they rallied through all of the questions. I couldn't leave. I stayed here until 8:30 when the end of the contest. It was a great experience. I was fortunate to be there, and Dylan deserves lots of credit for the success of the event. I'll end my report on that really positive note. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Littlefield. Any questions?
So I have a statement that I appreciate that you sharing that bit of information, because now that my kids are no longer in the high school, when my kids were here, I spent an inordinate amount of time as a PTO mom at the high school, which is weird. Usually you do that in elementary schools. But I love the high school, the energy. I would be in the library or like you said, so it's really awesome to hear. And because I miss that as a empty nester, quasi empty nester, I should say. So thank you for sharing that with us. I do have a question about when you show the enrollment trackers and the new enrollment, and specifically with the withdrawal new enrollment snapshot up through April 4th. So when I look at this, I feel like I'm missing something, like personally, and so we have the withdrawals of the 179, and we have the new enrollments with the 237. And I always feel like I'm missing a piece of information, like if it's plus or minus from the last time. And I know I could go and look, right? But it would be nice just to know if like we're standing firm with our withdrawals and or enrollments, and also do they counteract each other, right? So it's like, well, we've had 179 people withdraw, but we've had 237 new enrollments, and so it's kind of, I just feel like it's valuable information, but it's almost like, is it a plus or a minus from the
I'd like
last?
to see some trending data.
If that's,
So perhaps this report combined with, say, a year ago or
Yeah.
2 years ago, we can absolutely provide
I
that.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So I just want to say that I think the problem comes in with the date of July 1st, because we lose a group of 12th graders, and we lost 260 12th graders and had only 160 kindergartners come in. So overall, we have a decrease. That's not captured in this because of the date of July 1st. So I know we need to have a holistic picture of it. And I'm not sure what the best data pull is for that. But I get what you're saying. We're not seeing the picture we need to see on the overall decline in enrollment. And I think it's driven by the July 1st date on here, because we're not capturing the outgoing 12th graders.
I thank you, Ms. Anthony, for bringing that up, because that is something I'd asked for previously. And actually, in regards to not just the snapshot, but this other document, the enrollment tracker. And something I'd asked is like, could we just at least see what the numbers were for even just the previous time, just so we can see like what are the trend lines looking like? I don't need a graph. Although that'd be awesome. I love more data. But I just like get a sense of where the numbers are going. Like 2289, I think, is less than what we had in the last one, but I can go back and look for it, but it'd be nice to have that right in front of me at the time of this meeting.
Sure thing.
For me, I have a question about the withdrawals. I see here in this snapshot, you have the reasons as other schools or GED programs or just homeschooling and et cetera. But for those that have moved on to like private schools or just, moved out of our school district to those private schools, were there any other reasons for their withdrawals? Like, do we have that captured? Are we asking or doing like withdrawal surveys?
The only thing I will tell you is that I'm conducting my own survey of families who are submitting to me forms to be signed so that they can attend a CTE program outside of our district. And I send those families an email saying, would you mind sharing your thoughts with us as to why you're choosing not to attend South Kingstown High School? And they've been, so far it's a handful of families, and response number one on the survey, they have the opportunity to tell me it's none of my business. But they're pretty good about responding, and I can tell you that unscientifically, it's a balance between my child is interested in a CTE program that we don't offer at South Kingstown High, and we prefer to go to a smaller school. Those are the answers that I'm getting.
Thank you.
But as far as the others, though, you'll see that that the largest number of withdrawals are the students who finish grade 8 and then they withdraw in grade 9. And those are our CTE students and those who choose to go to private high schools.
Just, sorry, I just had one other thing I wanted to bring into the picture here that I know we get it, again, we get it on this warrant, public schools enrollment. But what I'm not seeing on here is how many of these kids, when they withdraw, are we no longer responsible for? Because I know we are responsible for a number of them. Going to other schools, we still have to pay for them, right? They're going to a charter school, you usually still have to pay for them, but if they discontinued, we don't. So it looks like a mixed bag, ones we do need to pay for, ones we don't need to pay for. So it would be nice to have that, a little more clarity on that as well. How many of these withdrawals from July 1st are ones that we're still on the hook for paying for their education versus ones that are out of our, realm.
One other question. I don't know if it's too early for this, but it would be also, I think, helpful for us to see next year's kindergarten enrollment where we stand. We had a huge drop from current first grade to current kindergarten. And I'm not sure where we are enrolling for next year. If we get start seeing that.
We've had our first kindergarten open house night. We've got several others. It's premature for us to draw any conclusions, but we had a pretty nice turnout for our first that was held here at the cafeteria.
Lisa?
I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Littlefield, you and I have had this discussion before and you explained it eloquently. But I think, and maybe we want to make this part of our next meeting with the next superintendent's report. But we talked about students going to charter schools and CTE programs. And the impact that has on our per pupil expenditure. And I know at the end of the discussion that you and I had, the summary, the 1-sentence summary on that was every time a youngster goes to another public high school where we're paying for them to go, or a charter school, we're paying for them to go, our per pupil expenditure goes up.
Correct.
Okay, so can you add to your next superintendent's report a presentation on that for the public? Because I'm not sure that people in the community understand that, especially we do have, a number of community members who are quite negative about their taxes and quite negative, won't use, trying to use a good word, quite negative about our per pupil expenditures, but I don't think they understand the impact of each child that goes to a charter school or a CTE program elsewhere. So if you can do that for the community, I would greatly appreciate it. But
I'd be happy to do that. If I did it before eloquently, you caught me on a good night. I'll try my best to be clear the next time, but it does go without saying, and Mr. Kilpatrick and I can put our heads together and put together a presentation. But it's absolutely true that when a student chooses to go to a charter school or chooses to go to a CTE program, our costs go up. We save virtually nothing in terms of our operating budget, and our per pupil expenditure goes up because we no longer have those students enrolled. So our costs go up, our enrollment goes down, and our per pupil cost goes up.
Okay, thank you. But I do have a couple of other questions. you knew I wasn't gonna stop with one.
Go ahead.
So when, when our students go to a CTE program for whatever CTE they are choosing to pursue, the way I understand it, we have no control over that student actually staying enrolled in that CTE program. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we operate on the honor system in that, if a student, if a student is enrolled in SK and they're in one of our CTE programs, if they choose to withdraw from that CTE program, then we give them notice that at the end of this semester, then you will need to return to your home school. We rely on the honor of other districts to do that, to monitor their progress and send the students back to us if they withdraw from their programs. One of the things that RIDE is now beginning to keep track of is success rate of CTE programs, and that is how many students are completing and earning the final credentials in all of the CTE pathways.
That sounds really good to me. I think this is my last question, but I'm not promising it's the last one. On the homeschool kids, do they have to show any progress academically? Do they have to do
We-
the RICAS?
No. No RICAS. We just need word from each of those homeschool families that their child has made adequate progress during the course of that school year.
For approval for homeschooling, typically you have to show the curriculum that they're going to use, the type of work that you're going to be, the students may be expected to use and grow from. So there is that component, but at the end of the day, yeah, they're not taking the RICAS, they're not taking typical assessments.
So, Mr. Littlefield, just to piggyback on Ms. Busso's question about the CTE programs and students that are not completing them, have we had any such issues as that where students went out for that CTE program and then dropped out of it?
Here at SK,
Yes.
yeah, well, we had earlier this year a young lady who went to her guidance counselor and said, "Yeah, I'm done with this," even though she was very close to completion. And then we said, "Well, you do realize that if you drop out of the CTE program, then you will return to your home school." And she said, "Oh, maybe I'll rethink my choice." And so she's, I can tell you for a fact, she's still enrolled at SK and still enrolled in the CTE program.
Man, my real question was, did we have any SK students that have gone on to other schools that
Gone
have returned?
I would, I can't answer that right now, but at our next meeting, I will.
Any further questions from Mr. Littlefield? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll make a
Yep.
motion to accept the superintendent report.
Second.
All,
Aye.
first item on that agenda and school committee business is discussion and action on educational survey for equity inclusion services update. I will turn that over to Mr. Littlefield.
I will just tell you that this committee recommended West Wind Consortium after our lengthy study, we contacted all of our bidders and informed them of the result of the bid process. And Mr. Kilpatrick and I have a meeting with a representative from West Wind on Friday to discuss the scope of their work, their timeline, and to draw up an agreement to have them become our service provider for this important service. So we'll have more to report at our next meeting subsequent to our meeting with West Wind.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Mr. Littlefield? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion and action and the superintendent research. NESDEC updates. I turn that over to Ms. Fetter, who is the chair of that committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just for a quick update of where we are. So we have a committee of 12 people, the list of which is on our website. I want to give a shout out to Eric, our media person, who's done a fabulous job of putting all the materials on our website. If you go to the website, right front and center is a button that says Superintendent Search. And on there, you can see the list of our committee, the profile that we came up with. We did the focus groups and the survey and all of those. The NESDEC, our consultant, compiled into our profile. The results of that assessment are also on our website. So you have the assessment, you have the profile, you have all of our search committee members, and our timeline. So pretty much all the work papers that we have are up for everybody to see. So I really have to thank Mr. Littlefield for putting together an amazing committee to do this work. It's very diverse, great people, very thoughtful and conscientious and caring. And it's a great process. And I just know that we're going to have a great outcome. We got 23 original applicants. That increased to 25. We did have 2 come in late. So very qualified candidates. We did have a chance to review them over the weekend, and we met last night to kind of, we ranked them and talked about who we wanted to actually interview. We came up with a list of 6 candidates that we thought were the best to move forward. Unfortunately, when NESDEC reached out to those 6, 2 of them were not able to continue with the search process. So we're down to 4, but very qualified 4 people. Tonight, I do need to know how many people we want to move forward with. I would recommend that we move forward with 3. So the search committee will interview the 4 and narrow it down to 3, but we can all weigh in on what that number should be. But that's one of the things I'd like to have us decide tonight. The other thing that we need to decide, we have a choice in Rhode Island. Not every state has a choice, but in Rhode Island, you can do final interviews in public session or in executive session. I think our committee was really hoping that we would do final interviews in public session, but that is for our committee to decide. So that is something that probably we should talk about tonight. So really, there's 2 things I would like to move forward tonight, and that is the number of candidates you want to see for finalists. And the second one is, do we want executive session, final interviews, or open session? And then the other thing I think we need to decide on is, what do those final interviews look like? That if we bring forward 2, 3, 4 people, do we have an in-district day for them? where they tour the schools, meet with administrators, have a meet and greet with community members or PTO or teachers. You know, what does that look like? And then do we want to try to interview them all in one day or different days? Not all of that has to be decided tonight, but it is something that we will need to figure out what that looks like. I think we need to remember that in order to find the best fit, that they need time to come and see our district. So they understand who we are, not just we understand who they are. So I'm recommending a day in district or a half day more realistically, but some time where they can get a feel of what the community is, what the buildings look like, the strength of our administrators. We have many strengths. We can show them off. So that's where we are. I'm going to ask Brad if he's also on the committee, if he has anything to add.
But one, I'd add that I think the job that NESDEC is doing is really outstanding, that the process has been excellent. And just to add to that screening process, we all independently looked at these resumes and came up with our top candidates separately. And when we got back together, the committee was very consistent, I think, in terms of who our top choices were. And in terms of what the NESDEC consultants are talking about in terms of the interview is more like 90 minutes with the committee with each person, rather than, I think the last round was something like 30 and only 2 or 3 questions. So we're talking about a much longer in-depth interview this time around that we could do, rather than something that I think was last time around was much shorter and challenging to really get to know somebody.
Yeah, I think this time around, the whole experience has been at a deeper level. And I think that NESDEC has brought that to the table. And their recommendation is that we do spend more time as the 7 of us with each of the candidates. Therefore, I would recommend that I think that the number we should bring forward is 3. I think 2 might not be enough. 3 seems like an ideal number, but I'd like to hear what everybody thinks.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Ms. Vetter. I think 3 is an appropriate number to bring forward, because then, you have an option. If someone drops out, you're not left with only one choice by default. So we do want to have a choice. So I definitely think 3 is appropriate. They mentioned as far as like having a public, or would the public session be 90 minutes as well for the interviews?
So that's all to be determined.
Okay.
My kind of thinking is that it would be something that the administrators, we have 2 amazing, all our administrators are amazing, but we have 2 on our committee, Tina Lyman and John Rapport. So they, in concert with Bob and Alexis, could bring them in and facilitate meeting with administrators, teachers, PTO, community in some way. And I don't think that's going to look the same for every individual. You're not going to get the same people in the room, but it would be a representation of who we are. And I think talking to, having the principal at every school give a tour of that building, we're pretty spread apart. Just to get to every school takes half an hour to make those trips. So, you're going to have to spend at least a half a day. So that could be, I see those kind of taking place the week of April 29th through like May 10th, that kind of time frame. We may need special meetings set up just to do these 90-minute interviews with 3 people. So that's something we need to decide. Again, not all of that needs to be decided tonight, but I do want to lay out kind of where we are, where we need to go. But yeah, we do need to. And again, I kind of defer to our administrators, especially with, Ms. Myers and Mr. Littlefield having, probably interviewed many people in the past, probably are better at this and we can tap into their expertise and know and trust that they will set up something fabulous.
So that sounds like you want the tour and the interviews in conjunction with each other. Is that right?
I logistically, I'm thinking bringing in them separately and then maybe having a day of interviews where we just go from as earliest as we can, what, 6 hours at a stretch and interview them. It might be a Saturday, something, open session for that 6 hour day. That's just what I'm thinking. If you guys want to split it up and do one every day for 3 nights, that's doable too. But I think it would be really hard to bring them all into the district and do that with an interview right after, but maybe it works. I mean, I'm open. I just think all of those are possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to all those possibilities as well. Just I think the longer session makes sense to have a discussion with the candidates. Whether it's public or executive, I guess my question there would be, was there any concerns if it's public, if it's someone who maybe hasn't notified their district yet, or like, or is that even a concern if it's a public interview with them? Is that going to be a problem for the candidate?
Yeah, and before they're finalists, that's definitely a concern. We do not put out who the 25 people are. That is to be kept in the committee. However, when we get down to 3 people, I think that might be just a reality at that point. It becomes public if we feel that our community has a right to see those interviews.
Yeah, I think I would be more in favor of the transparency of having the public interviews. I just wanted to make sure it's not going to hamstring us as far as our ability to bring those candidates back into the table and to the podium to have a discussion with us.
And there's a risk there because if we say it's going to be open session and they say, oh my, I don't want that.
That's almost like a
That's-
self-selection thing right there, because if they're not willing to get out and talk in public, I don't know if they're going to be the superintendent for us. So,
yeah, there is that.
yes. So, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm coming down. I think 3 is a good, I think having it in public is good. And those are the 2 things you're really asking us to look at tonight. So, yeah, that's where I land on it.
So, unfortunately, having much experience navigating the superintendent hiring process over the years, I've experienced them in different ways. So back before being on school committee, I experienced when Bob Hicks retired, and the process, I was a parent that was part of the process when Kristen Stringfellow was brought on. And I do recall the very final piece were public interviews. And it was impressive to watch. I can remember being in the library and the room was filled with parents and teachers and administrators, and it was in the evening. And I just remember specifically Kristen herself being grilled in a public interview. And to me, as anybody who has sat in the superintendent seat, and especially if you're at a town council, that happens pretty regularly. So you need to be able to handle it. So I'm not opposed to the final piece being part of a public. And in fact, I think it demonstrates to our community really who that person is. I will say in the next, we did have in subsequent hiring processes, we had a scenario where we did do them in executive session. And that one was a little bit shiftier. And things kind of, if someone maybe had a very strong interview and someone else didn't, the public didn't get to see that. And so when the resulting person was selected, it was kind of like, really? And so it was, well, that was a final step. So I'm getting there. So the finalists were selected after executive session, and then we had a summertime public. It was almost like forum. It was less interviewee and more like a public forum here. And our community members were set up and could actually and ask questions, and they filled out pieces of paper, and we had a moderator come in. It was actually very well done. And again, it was a matter of you got to see who the people were in our public face, faced with our community members, asking hard questions. And I think that's appropriate, especially where we are right now. Like, because we want to know, how are you going to handle a $150 million bond? How are you going to handle a $150 million build simultaneously to being our educational leader and running our operational budget and caring for our kindergartners and so they need to be asked hard questions. So I do think having the public forum style is super helpful in making decisions and seeing people. So I'm curious with the 3 versus 4. It sounds like we have had very strong candidates apply and then having very strong finalists. And I'm curious now, one of the snafus we did run to James's point was we had 3 finalists, and we had a very strong candidate that kind of rose to the top, and everybody was super excited. And then her home district came in and said, yeah, we're going to up your pay. Stay with us, please. And she did drop out. So that is a risk that you run. And so to me, it might make a little bit sense of carrying all 4. Because there is a distinct possibility that that could happen if all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're going to do this in public. They announce, and then next thing you know, they kind of have dropped off.
And my thinking of bringing forward only 3, because we still would have 2 people to decide from if one person dropped out. The other thing is the work of the committee. We're down to 4, and we're going to interview all of them. And I think we need the discernment of coming up with 3 out of those 4.
I think if you're potentially interested in 4, you might make 4 a maximum and allow the committee to decide. Maybe there are only 3 that we want to
Gotcha.
pass on.
Yeah.
But we could bring 4. If we feel all 4 are strong, we want to let the school committee make the decisions, then we can. But if we want to say there's really 3 that, and a
These
4th
are our
does-
top 4, but these
Yep.
3 are really
right, and so
standing
we're
out.
not going to bring you all 4.
Right.
Because it's just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
That makes sense. I do like the idea of having the candidates, I think individually come in and experience each of our schools. They're very unique environments, definitely very unique ecosystems. And spending a couple hours, and I believe that is part of the process that we experienced previously. And then having having that, I feel like it depends on where, the travel and their schedules, but it would seem as though it would make logical sense to try to do it in one day versus spreading it out over the course of a couple of weeks. But again, that's a logistic thing. And I don't know what that would look like with, I would like you defer to our administrators to say, this
Yeah.
is actually ideal.
I think so. I think that it could take many forms, and we can trust our administrators that are here during the day when we're not to make that happen with how many candidates we bring forward. But I do have to say, if we thought all 4 were worthy of it, we would make that definitely a recommendation. But I think we do need to really look at all of them and try to discern the qualities of each of them and bring forward the ones we really feel are qualified.
So, having been through this a couple of times, I think, like Kate said, there was that one time that the candidates were discussed in executive session, and I wasn't happy with that at all. But I think that what this committee, which I'm extremely happy with the way that committee was set up, the fact that it brings in people from all aspects, from the community to the student, to the teachers, to the administrators, to review those applications and keep that information confidential. I like that process. And, I would like, I'm not sold on 3. But I think that I would prefer to say to the screening committee, if there's one of those 4 candidates that shows some weakness compared with the other 3, then bring 3 forward. Otherwise, the 4, I would rather that be the discretion of the screening committee. You guys have seen all the applications. You've spent time discussing the profile of what you're looking for and so forth and so on. So I would leave that decision 3 or 4 up to you. I think I might just go. It keeps blinking. Thank you. Okay. Okay, sorry. I like the idea of the 90-minute interviews, and we could do them. We can certainly. Is my mic on?
Yeah.
Okay. I retired my teacher voice at 2:00. Okay, so, I like the idea of 90-minute interviews because I think that will give us the opportunity to ask better questions, of the candidates. And I think we can get, help from the NASDAQ people, our administrative team, our legal team, on what questions we should ask. So I think, doing them during a day on a Saturday or another day that we can all take off, like, yeah, like we'll take April 15th. Yeah, yeah, in public. I think those interviews need to be, in public. And personally, I think each of the finalists should spend a day in the district. I don't think we should limit them to a morning or, I mean, I went to Peacedale Elementary for my visit on Friday. Oh my God, I had so much fun. It was so awesome. And I was only there for the morning. And so while this discussion has been taking place here at the table, I'm thinking I wasn't going there trying to come in to run the district. And that was one school. So I think they should spend a day, they should each plan on spending a day in the district. And then we can arrange the interviews however they get arranged. I wrote something else down. I can't read it though. Oh, would we look to have a facilitator for the interviews, or does NASDAQ do that, or?
So NASDAQ is going to come in and do another presentation about what our role is in the interviews and how those should work for best outcomes. So I believe that's on our next meeting. So we'll have a chance to ask more direct questions to them at that time. And I think that's worthwhile because, insight into what questions to ask and how much time it really takes to gather the correct information and really come to feel like you know the background of that person and their qualifications. So, and they said 90 minutes, but I think if we have them come in to do their presentation, it's a great time for us to also ask them questions about this process, because I think process matters, and understanding how we can, make the best process happen, we can make the best outcome happen. So, so we'll do that at our next meeting. So we don't have to decide everything tonight. But I do like where you're going, that we really do, we need to bring them in to give them time in our district to see if this is where they want to be. The last thing we need is to bring in somebody that later on says, oh, I didn't want this, so we want to be careful on both sides. We want to make sure we get the right person. We want to make sure that person feels like this is their next journey on their career path. So it's important on both sides. Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. Being a part of this last journey here, the path that we took just was not for South Kingstown. Which brings me to supporting 100% that the individuals visit our schools, visit our teachers, visit administrators over there, and really get to know them. I want our teachers and our administrators and even our children to like who the next person is that is going to drive South Kingstown where it needs to be. We didn't do a good job there the last time, and I want to make sure, and I'm sure, Miss Better, that you're doing everything you can alongside Miss Nestek to ensure that we make the right choices. But I did have one question in regards to having those candidates go out to the school. Will we look for feedback from those folks inside of the school?
So the purpose is for them to get to know the district for those days, not for us to necessarily say, so how did you like us? However, by coming up with the questions that we ask during that interview process, we could gather the pertinent information. You've seen our schools. What challenges do you see? Having been to the high school, how are you prepared to help us with our facility plan? Those kind of things. We can build off of them being in our district, and it get, now they can comment directly because they have seen it. So, I mean, that's another reason why it's important for them to have that. So it's not really feedback, but we do want to make sure that, again, what opportunities, what challenges, how do you think you would, drive us forward? So again, I understand what you're saying, but it's more of a giving them a chance to see so that they can discern where they want to take this district if they were the superintendent.
Thank you. That was it for me. If there's nothing further,
Well,
we,
I was wondering, do we
I'm
need
not
to?
sure.
Well, because our time is short, so I know you're saying we
So-
don't have to make these decisions right now, but when should we make these
So,
decisions? Because I think our next meeting is the
I do hear a
23rd.
consensus that we want possibly all four if the committee feels that they're worthy, but at a minimum three, and that we definitely want to have this in open session. Every single person has said that. So if I'm going to defer to Michael, do I need a motion when we have consensus?
No,
Okay, great answer.
I think you are good to go, move forward. If everyone seems to be on board, there's no outliers. I would feel comfortable moving forward without a motion.
Right, so
I took a list.
so next item on the agenda is the school building committee updates. Ms. Kate.
So, last night, as Mr. Beasley stole my thunder, there was a town council meeting last night and school building committee, the school facilities project was a very hot topic. So there was a lot discussed last night. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch the meeting, I highly recommend that you watch the meeting so that you can kind of see where our town councilors, land and kind of I'll say the rhetoric that is being discussed. But one of the pieces that was super helpful, and again, Mr. Beasley brought it to our attention, and it is going to be disseminated amongst the school committee. It was only presented, I hadn't seen it prior to the meeting. Brian Sylvia presented it last night, and it was the new high school bond project funding and analysis. There were a number of assumptions that were made. The biggest component, I think, is the word that there were a number of assumptions that were made. These were all projections, and it was all based around the $150 million new high school bond project. Some of the assumptions were it would be a 20-year bond. The interest rate would be 3.5%. The issuance of the $150 million bond would happen in May. I should put my glasses on. May 2028 with principal and interest payments beginning in fiscal year 2029. The assumption that the ride reimbursement percentage of 52.50% on 117,672,245 of eligible project costs. Another assumption that was made was median assessed value of a single family property at $468,300 in fiscal year 2024. And that one has pretty much been standard across. The growth on the tax base of 9, this is going to get into a lot of kind of to me, as we get deeper into this, it gets to a lot of discussion that super big picture, a lot of numbers, percentage, statistical valuation years based on, so we have 9.98 in statistical revaluation years based on an average of the last 4. To me, I've lived this and breathed this for the past X number of years. We have accountants at the table. But to me, one of my drivers is to make sure that this is spelled out in layman's terms. It has taken me years to make sure that I understand what these mean. And I talk with Brian Sylvia, and I talk with Luke Murray, and I talk with Ryan, and I talk with, people who navigate this, and Chris Spiegel. And so I want to make sure that people don't have to do that level of discussion to understand the talking points that do come out of this. So again, there's a lot of assumptions going on with what they projected. The good news to it that was lost in I will use Michael's word, the kerfuffle last night, was that the average number that they mapped it out from 300 assessed properties at 300,000 all the way up to $1 million. And then they focused in and honed in on the average median home cost of $468,300. And the impact for over the 5 years of the rollout was actually at $318, which it previously had been in the 460 range. But one of the things they wanted to make sure is that it was very clear, and I felt that this has been clear all along, is that that number would roll forward through the years, and it would be a total out of a taxpayer, it would be a total of $9,468 more dollars that we would be paying if we weren't, if we didn't have the bond. But it's mapped out, and again, we'll get the document because it was publicly shown last night. We'll make sure everybody gets it. They did a couple other assumptions strictly at the request of 2 counselors that wanted to know what if scenarios, and they mapped those out. And again, that will be attached with the document that that will be sent to y'all. And if you watched the meeting last night, there was a in-depth discussion that went over hours. It was quite antagonistic at times. But we'll be brought up to speed. One of the final points was that on this Thursday, we do have a school building committee meeting that will take place here in the cafeteria from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., where we will be putting together the selection team to who will go through the the interviewing process for the construction manager at risk that we will be bringing on to work with our architects and engineers and the school building committee. And so we'll make that appointment on Thursday. It will be a body of 7. There will be 4 members of the community because we had such an incredible number of community members who wanted to be involved. We will be appointing 2 members of our school building committee. And last night they appointed the town councilor, Greg Sweet, to be part of it because he has the most experience in the construction world. So I thought that was a wonderful appointment. I was very happy to hear that. Ironically, he almost passed on it, which was interesting, but he did accept it. So that will take place from between 5 and 6 on the 11th here. And then immediately following will be a community forum. It'll be a town hall style forum. It will be a presentation made by Phil Conti from Studio Jade and Slim Collaborative, and also Chris Spiegel from Left Field will be here, and they will be kind of running it. It is not going to be a formal town official run meeting. It is a forum. It is an information presentation session. However, it will be interactive. We'll accept questions from community members. If there's input people want to give, that will be listened to. And we're hoping for a great turnout. We're hoping for a robust discussion. Our initial plans were that there would only be 2, I'll say, talking points about financials, because the school building committee, the OPM, the architect, the engineer, we're not in our function was to create the projects, not figure out how to pay for it. That's between the town council and the school committee. And so we want to really make sure, even though there's a lot of roles that overlap, we want to make sure there's a clear delineation between the charges. And we were charged with working with bringing on an OPM, bringing on an architect and engineer, bringing on a construction manager at risk, and bringing the experts to the table, putting together a top quality project that hopefully the community will embrace. And then it will be on the shoulders of the town council and the school committee to sort out the financials of it. So Brian Sylvia's will be, it was directed last night that Brian Sylvia, the town manager, Luke Murray, they'll all be here in attendance on the 11th, and Brian will be available if people have more in-depth specific financial questions. So whether that will be part of the presentation or not, it certainly won't be coming from our architects and our OPMs. It will be coming from our town finance officer. So something else that there are a couple sticking points that I experienced while I was watching the meeting last night. And one of the comments that I wanted to bring attention to was the fact that there's a kind of a dialogue out in the community that nobody knows about the bond, and that nobody knows that it's $150 million bond, up to $150 million bond. And I just would like to kind of call that what it is, and it's just not true. You drive through our streets, and there are many signs that are, I call them pretty flowers now that it's they're popping up all over town. Some are yes, some are vote no. And there's a lot of signs that are popping up. So that leads me to believe, as I'm driving down the road, that many people, I think somebody used 1 out of 5 people know. So if you talk to 5 people, only 1 of them knows what's happening. And again, I disagree with that statement immensely. I talk to people every day at the supermarket. I talk to people every day in my neighborhood. I talk to people wherever I go. And unfortunately, that's all everybody ever talks to me about when I do go out in public. But all ages, all stages. My brother's a retired police officer, lives in Pine Hill. His whole household talks about it, and they're on their, we'll say 30 to 50-year-old range. My mom goes to the bowling alley every Wednesday with a group of 75 to 95-year-olds, and they're talking about it every day. People are talking about it. People are fully aware. Could they be more aware? Absolutely. We have tasked Studio Jade and Leadville with putting together a voter information sheet that will be made available. We are disseminating that around the community. Information boards are being put up in as many public areas as we can possibly come up with. Myself and Brian Mahoney have been brainstorming. We have 23 boards that we've already started to put up. We want to get the information correct. We wanted the financials coming directly from the town before we made the final backboards. But that information is going up. It's going to be scattered all around town. I will touch a little bit upon, what Mr. Beasley said about the mailer. I personally have been quite adamant that as there is no mailer coming from me to any household in this community. However, if the town wants to send a town official mailer to the 18 and over crowd that are registered to vote in our community, I fully support them in doing that. It's on them. It's their decision. But it will not come from the school building committee. And I would highly recommend it not come from the school system. But that's just my PTSD. I don't know, Ryan, I know you're here and I know there was a lot of financials talked about. I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to chime in, but I'm more than happy to, if you want to give a perspective on any of it, happy to hear it. There was a lot of discussion last night, and
I will make one comment. Full disclosure on the proposed $1 million ask from the school department for the next 5 years. So Brian Sylvia did reach out to me because he said he was tasked with this. And he said the number that was proposed to him was $1 million. He said, "What do you think?" Basically. I said, "Well, let me go back and look at, let me look at some data and get back to you." It was tough to ballpark it, essentially. It's tough to project what we would potentially be asking for going forward. If enrollment continues to decline, we're probably in the same situation next year as we are this year, right? So we won't necessarily need to ask. $1 million a year, I just told him that's fine for your scenario. Totally understand the gun that he was under. So just full disclosure that I did have that conversation with Brian. And, I did not come up with $1 million number. He did not come up with $1 million number, but that was the number that we went with. I think the last increase that the school department received was slightly over $1 million 5 years ago, roughly. So that's the only point I wanted to speak to tonight. So that's okay. Yep.
No. So in the document, No,
So
in the document, and when you watch the movie, when you watch the town council, so a member of the school, a member of the town council asked to tack on $1 million. What would the taxes look like if the school committee asked for $1 million every year, the bond? So year over year, we'd be upping our budget by $1 million, which is a thing that I could see happening in the next couple of years for multiple reasons. But so the scenario was played out. And so that's just what he wanted to clarify is he did not say that that's what we would be doing.
And neither did Brian.
And neither did Brian, correct.
Yeah,
It was an
exactly. So,
assumption that was made
exactly.
in a worst case scenario. They wanted to map that out. So I appreciate you making that
No problem.
clarification.
Thank you.
And the final thing that I want to say is when it comes to the high school, I think one of the biggest components it goes to that point is if this bond passes and we move forward and we build a new high school, I can't say that. The footprint of the high school will be a clear 100,000 square feet smaller than our current footprint. It was brought to my attention last night that Broad Rock, if I'm not mistaken, is 80,000 square feet. So we'd be chopping Broad Rock off of this building. The operational expense savings there is going to be immense, especially when you look at the technology, the infrastructure that we have supporting this building, which is Broad Rock plus in size more than what the new high school would be. And the inefficiency of the fuel supply, of the HVAC, all of it. So a new 21st century building that is 140,000 square feet versus a 240,000 square feet building is incredible.
I just wanted, to that point, there are many ways that this debt service scenario changes for the better for the taxpayer. There was zero talk about that side of the scenario. They just want to talk about worst case scenarios. However, we have a 9.4 million pay-go that could be used on the debt service, or it could be used to leverage projects done on building improvements. Either one is a win for the district because they've asked both questions. How do we keep the debt service payments down? How do we pay for the other 30 million in other needs and other buildings? But that's still to be determined. But that's a great thing that's not even in the analysis. The cost saving, again, isn't in the analysis. We could use that cost saving to pay down the debt early, therefore saving taxpayer money, or we could have it designated to go towards maintenance improvements on our other building. There are parts of this deal that still have to be determined. And if they're talking out of my words, both sides of the mouth, because they want to keep taxpayer the taxes down, and I agree with that. And they want to fix the buildings. We want to do both. We all want to do both, but you have to balance it. But there's money to do these things, to keep taxpayer payments down and to fix our buildings. We just have to make decisions, but we need to do it together. And you know, coming up with false scenarios to make a hidden agenda that they want the numbers to look as bad as possible is bad for our town. We need to be honest about the numbers. We need to come together and make good decisions because these are hard decisions we're going to have to make because we want both. But you have to give and take on both of these. But these are opportunities. And the best thing is these are opportunities to make our district better, to keep our kids in our district. And I say this every time, our students deserve this. So there's so much positive that I was so disappointed in last night's meeting because it's like, wait, there should be joy and coming together and seeing opportunity. And there was none of that. And that's really sad. And so I would just like people to rethink this in a way that we can look at, okay, we have these funds. What is the best use of all of them for the community?
Yep.
And again, I think the school building committee has done a great job of trying to get the facts out there. And I think our financial people in Mr. Sylvia and Kilpatrick are doing a great job. I don't think it's helpful to bring what if scenarios in. It just dilutes the true information that's out there.
And I also agree with you, and I think that's kind of another piece of this update is that the hope is that on Thursday with this town hall forum is that's what we're there to do, kind of to, like you said, to inform and share the excitement of what is to come for the future of our school district going forward.
I like that word, excitement. Let's bring excitement to this. Joy, opportunity, excitement. Yeah. I think we need to remember those things.
Yep.
First, just a follow up on the PAYGO funding question was, how was that calculated into when we got down to $318 average for the average home? Is the PAYGO funding
Nope,
it's not in there
nope,
right now?
that'll be a
Okay.
footnote in the information. yeah.
Okay, so that's still a choice the town council would
Yep.
make when they actually offer
Correct.
bond. And then about the forum, are those being recorded? Are those?
They'll be
Okay.
live streamed and and they will also be interactive. He uses Phil uses, I think it's called Menti
Mentimeter,
tool.
yeah.
Yeah, the Mentimeter, and it'll be interactive for folks who can't make it in person.
What's the date of the second one?
The second one is April 20th. It's a Saturday and that one will start at 9. So Thursdays will be 6 to, I don't know that we put an end time, but probably 8. And then Saturday would be 9 to 11 on the 20th.
Ms. Massanetti,
Yeah.
I just have one question. It's going to come across as rhetorical because it is. If not now, when?
Exactly. 100%.
Thank you for saying that, because I keep saying just that. If we don't do it now, then when? Right? One, we'll be letting the students down, we'll be letting the teachers down, we'll be letting the community down who do support, we support building new, right size in our school district to fit the needs of the community. And there's no better time than now. That's it for me. Ms. Wilson.
So not to be repetitive, but we started this process before Ms. Massanetti was on the school committee, so I was the only one that's still sitting here. And you won't talk about what I'm disgusted with. But we're finally in a place where we're moving forward. And I've said this before, I said it in the town hall. When I was in South Kingstown schools, they built, the community built South Road, the facility at Curtis Corner, the Wakefield School, because when I was in 4th grade, the original Wakefield School burned down. They built the Wakefield School. I think it was just those 3 schools. All within a year. 3 schools. Well, in case you weren't wondering, when I was in 6th grade, I didn't pay for those schools. The taxpayers paid for them. And we got those nice new schools. Our kids deserve the same thing. And we've been working on this long enough.
Yeah.
Don't do math, so you figure out how old I am.
I'll spare you. I won't do that. But I do want to agree with Ms. Vetter. I think it is got to be looked at as a positive opportunity for the town to invest in our future, invest in our kids. We have an amazing situation in our town where we have very little debt elsewhere. We can take this on. We can do this as a community to invest in our children, invest in their education, prepare them for the 21st century, which the school unfortunately cannot. The facilities just aren't there. It's retrofitted to Frankenstein state that is just not tenable going forward. And to your point, it's bigger, twice the size of what we need. So why are we spending all this money on our heating and cooling for half a building that is empty? It just doesn't make any sense. In the long run, it's going to be an investment that's going to save the taxpayer money over renovation or any other idea that we have. This has been well vetted. You've been working on this for a long time. You're one of the best people to be in this position to lead that committee and present a project, because you've seen a lot of these different projects come and go. So I truly believe this is the best project that can be presented to the town at this time. And this is the time. This is the time to do it, to invest as a community in our children and our future.
I appreciate that. And one final thing I wanted to say, and then we can obviously move on to adjournment, but I just wanted to thank everybody who we rely on, because as elected officials, none of us are educational leaders. None of us are school building facility builders. None of us are school financial or municipal financial experts. Well, maybe you might be tiptoe into that, but I certainly don't. I can run my household expenses. But we rely on experts, and we have gone out and we have sought out and we have actually attracted some amazing, talented experts. And I thank Chris Spiegel and Jim Rogers and Matt McBurney and the team that they work with at Left Field, because these folks, this is what they do for a living. They do this, they've done it in multiple communities. This is their entire occupation. And I almost feel the need sometimes to apologize to them because of the way they're talked to and the way they're categorized and the way they're grilled as though they're just some person we picked up off the street. Like, this is their expertise. This is what they do, and they do it well. Same thing with Phil Conti, Studio Jade, Slam Collaborative, whoever we're going to be. Some of the names that we're going to see with the folks, I was able to sit into this like initial construction manager at risk group. So many huge construction management firms are going to be bidding for this. And go back to right before Phil Conti came and basically saved our butts. Like, nobody wanted to touch us. Like, we have powerhouse people, experts in their field. So some of the folks that have put their names in to be part of the interview committee for the construction manager at risk, they themselves, we have, I think it was 13 community members who want to be part of that team. And they actually, a couple of the community members themselves work for some of these big firms, and they run contracts, or they work in their office, or and we'll be going over those folks in public on Thursday. We are relying on these experts to guide us. So it's not like Kate Massinanti has a whim and decided she wanted to build a fancy high school over here. It's like we relied on these experts to educate us and inform us. And I do believe we've done a good job trying to educate the community. I do believe we can continue and we can do a better job. There's always room for improvement. I love when you use the word opportunity, because it's we have strengths and we have opportunities. And I think we do have an opportunity to continue to discuss. And having these updates every week is super helpful. And I'm looking forward to a month from now. So thank you for my long update, and I apologize it took so much time.
Thank you for the long update. Shows the amount of work that has been put into it, right? That each time we have a meeting, you have an update. So there's a lot of work going into this project, and it's worth it, right? The investment is worth it. So with that, I would ask for a request to adjourn the meeting. That was our last item on the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes at 8:51.